One thing that is very popular in Australia, and probably shows a bit of the understanding of Australians, is that they love sport or sports. Often you're going along the street and you see all these people waiting for the bus to come and take them to the stadium. And you can tell where they're going because of what? They all look like their football team, don't they? Or their cricket team, or their rugby, or their tennis heroes. Some people like sport as just an interesting and perhaps even as an enjoyable extra in their life, but many Australians are totally committed to their team. And we see evidence of this in their lives. They become committed members of their club. They attend all the home matches of their team. They put flags on their cars or team pillows in the back window. They have photos and posters at home showing who their favourite team is. On the game days, they will wear the same colours or even clothing as the team they like. They'll even wear makeup showing the colours of their team. They are totally committed to their sports, their sport team. I'm sure many of us who perhaps not so committed to sport might think they're a bit over the top sometimes, that they're gone a bit off the game. But they know all about their team. They know all about individual members and particularly the stars. They can tell you all about it. They'll spend much time convincing you that their team is the best team that's going to win the series or win the cup. Now, obviously, people who are not so committed to sport, as we said, are tempted to write them off as a bit of a fanatic, a sports fanatic. But we would all have to admit, when we see those followers, that they are committed to their team, aren't they? They're telling everyone about them, how good they are, what's going to happen in the next game. They are committed followers of their team. Now, if we've got people who are not so interested, maybe enjoy watching it on TV but never go around wearing stuff, or we see the really committed members with their clothing, their banners, their whatever they take to the game, who do you think that the team members, the actual players, would prefer? Would they prefer someone who's lukewarm, or would they prefer someone who's really committed to the team? Well, I think it's obvious, isn't it? The fans who are committed, dress like them, barrack for them in every match, spend money to go over to the eastern states to watch them play. Obviously, the team would be very happy with those committed members. Now, what of about those of us who profess to be Christians, followers of Christ? Wouldn't it be great if when some TV news reporter came and interviewed all the people we knew, our friends and family, that they found out that we were fanatical followers of Jesus Christ? Wouldn't God be pleased with us because we try and follow him in everything? What an impact we would have on the world for God if people saw us as committed Christians, followers of Jesus Christ, putting his name up as most important. So how are we to follow Jesus? How are we to follow Jesus? Let's not just use our thoughts. Let's go to the gospel that we read from Luke's Gospel, chapter 5. We read about the time the Lord Jesus called Levi, the tax collector, to follow him. Probably hadn't met probably hadn't met Jesus before that time, might have heard of the Messiah or the one being put forward as the Messiah, but Levi probably hadn't met Jesus at all. So it's quite instructive what Levi does. From Levi's actions, we learn two very important requirements of following the Lord Jesus Christ. We find two very important requirements of following the Lord Jesus Christ. If you have Bibles, I encourage you to open them to this passage in Luke 5, verses 27 onward. What are these two very important requirements of following the Lord Jesus? Well, as you read there, firstly, Levi left everything. Levi left everything. That was the first point. Secondly, when Jesus called him Levi, what? Thought about it? Stayed home for about 6 months, went to college, what? No, he followed Jesus. He followed Jesus. That's our second point. Now, the passage is very brief, but I don't believe, and you might be relieved with this, that Levi suddenly began following Jesus about and left everything. Why would we get that thought? Can't rely on our reason. Is there something in the passage that tells us that? Did Levi leave everything behind and follow Jesus? Well, he did, but perhaps not in the way we might think of it sometimes. So how could it be said of Levi that he left everything and followed Jesus if he still has his house and the use of his money to put on a banquet for Jesus Christ? Very next verse. Did Levi leave everything? No, he still had his money and his house. He left his job, obviously, but he still had money and he still had his house. So how can we say he left everything? I think the answer needs to be this. Levi put Jesus first in his life. Levi put Jesus first in his life. Levi, as we said, quit his job as a tax collector to follow Jesus. How could he physically follow Jesus at that time if he stayed in his job? Levi put earning money to live luxuriously or to increase his superannuation or investments behind him to serve Jesus. Still had his money in his house, but Levi used his house and money to serve Jesus. Levi put Jesus first and foremost in his life. In effect, Levi left everything behind to follow Jesus. So later on, if you turn over to Luke 9, verse 23, Jesus said to the people, "If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life, says Jesus, will lose it. But whoever loses his life for me will save it." Well, what a paradox. But Jesus goes on. He says, "What good is it for a man to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit his very soul, his very self?" Jesus goes on to say, "If anyone is ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in his glory and in the glory of the Father and of the holy angels."